Well, let's take a closer look at that inflation crisis in Turkey. Doga Eralp joins me to discuss the country's economy and its regional implications. Doga is a senior professorial lecturer in the School of International Service at American University here in Washington. Thank you for joining me again.
Thanks for having me, Rochelle. Nice seeing you again.
So first, I want to start with your reaction to these GDP figures. What are your thoughts on what's driving it, and what do they tell us about the overall health of the economy?
Well, the GDP figures are quite high. The last quarter performed around 7.4 of an increase, and previous it was 2.7. So lower interest rates by default leads to GDP growth. Yet, right, there's much more to what's going on in the economy in Turkey, which basically drives the inflation high, these low interest rates, and then it impacts the overall political and economic stability of the country. There's this uncertainty with the high inflation. It impacts the consumer end of the market as well as the manufacturing sectors.
So then how even is the economic growth and recovery we're seeing so far?
It's really hazy. I mean, obviously the certain sectors vis-a-vis export-related industries made significant headways. But on the other hand, the constant inflation and Turkish lira's loss of about 45% against the US dollar really makes up for that gain in terms of adding extra costs in terms of manufacturing, access to other technological byproducts that many Turkish manufacturers need for their export. It makes their business much more difficult, and really it reflects back on the laborers as in lower wages and in certain instances mass layoffs or crack upon unions and other projected strikes and whatnot. So there is this uncertainty. And also, obviously, the inflation itself, as much as the Turkish government official numbers puts the inflation around close to 20%, on the consumer end, when you go to the supermarket, when you look into, let's say, the dairy products or olive oil or other related, like day-to-day staples that Turkish families really depend on,
right.
You see the inflation rate being around 67 to 70%. That's much higher than what the officials actually do.
So then would you say Turkey's inflation is more of a result of some of these goods costing more globally, given the supply chain issues, the devaluing of the lira, or is something else at play?
Well, unfortunately, Turkish economic woes have been really on the forefront of Turkish economic outlook for the past 3, if not longer, 4 years, in terms of lack of transparency, constant meddling by the political powers in the independence of the central bank. Just to give you an idea, over the course of the last 26 months, the head of the central bank had been changed 3 times until we have the current person. So the independence or relative autonomy of the central bank that provided some sort of a kind of safety or security for foreign investors is not out there. And the foreign investors are quite skeptical. So whereas this kind of low interest rates should drive, and also the low cost of Turkish lira should drive investors, it actually does quite the opposite. So the investors are quite hesitant to go into the Turkish markets, which actually makes everyone quite shaky and nervous in Turkey right now.
So then, as you mentioned, with all these changes at the central bank, then what is the government's reaction to the lira plummeting and the reasons behind it?
Well, President Erdogan has this one-liner. He says high interest rates lead to high inflation, not the other way around. And it's kind of a simple causality framework he projects in the way he wants to see the economy being run. Is by itself the main I would say, cause behind all this trouble. And any such criticism in the direction of the Turkish economy is either silenced or kicked out. And for that matter, it leaves a lot of folks nervous. And as much as opposition and other, let's say, chambers of commerce and other important business leaders reach out to the government, government is quite set on its way to continue the policy of keeping the interest rates low to make the cost of borrowing cheaper.
Well, we do appreciate your insights. Doga Eralp, the Senior Professorial Lecturer in the School of International Service at American University.